So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Dominic Kirkman, who's founder and CEO at Humant. And firstly, Dominic, thank you for spending some time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, your business, what you do, how you help people, that'd be great.
Sure, of course. Well, thank you for having me on. My name is Dominic Kirkman. Yes, I'm the founder and the CEO of Humant. We are helping occupational therapists do some of their work remotely by enabling a patient, a carer, or family member to capture a three-dimensional model of the patient's home, as well as uploading images and videos of the patient interacting with their environment. We make that data available securely and remotely for an occupational therapist to be able to perform their environmental assessment or access visit without having to visit the property, and also some of their functional assessments in the very early stages of perhaps triaging the needs of a patient. And really, we're trying to overcome the problem we have in this country, which is there's a backlog associated with people being seen by occupational
Yes.
therapists. And they really are the gatekeeper for anyone who requires any adaptations or equipment or advice about how to stay safe in their home. And particularly as we have an aging population and we have an increasing rate of disability in the population as well.
That's fascinating. We were talking just before we started about COVID and the impact of lockdown, and one thing it certainly taught me is the pointlessness of lots of travel to and from places when things like it sounds like what you do can but both solve the need to travel and therefore it's like reduce expense, but as you say, speed up queues and waiting lists.
Yeah, that's right. It's about reducing those waiting lists. It's about keeping occupational therapists doing what they like to do, which is looking after patients and finding
Yes.
the right solutions for them. Really, the environmental assessment and the access visits are largely speaking an administrative task that they need to
Yep.
perform, but it's essential that they have then their knowledge for them to be able to make the right decisions off that information. But it does mean that when they are visiting the patient, because we're not trying to eliminate patient visits, they're visiting for a clinical reason to actually
Yep.
spend time with the patient and engage with them, and do more of their functional assessment work that they do.
Wonderful. What a wonderful thing. Look, Dominic, maybe we could kick off. You talk a little bit about your background and how you got into business and why this particular one for you.
Sure. Okay. My background, I'm an engineer by background, a mechanical engineer. But actually, I fell into the healthcare informatics industry very early on. Started off working for a mental health trust in their IT department. It was right at the time where the National Programme for IT, if anyone can remember that, was starting to form. And I was involved in the National Programme for IT within the Mental Health Trust. But then I actually took a role in the National Programme's headquarters based in Leeds, which is now where I live. I moved from Derbyshire up to Leeds for that reason, and that was in the radiology program called the PACT program. So we really helped hospitals become digital from an
Right.
imaging perspective the first time round. From there, I've really become, I guess, an international expert really in medical imaging, and I've spent a lot of my time in the sales arena, so helping organisations select the right products when they want to implement digital radiology or upgrade their existing systems. And importantly and latterly in my career, I've been involved in teleradiology. So that's helping radiologists do some of their work remotely
Right.
by enabling the images that are captured for patients in terms of X-rays and CT scans and MRI scans, for example, to be made available to a specialist remotely. And that really helps in things like stroke pathways and stroke networks, where there might not be a specialist neurologist on call in your area, but actually there might be somebody in a different time zone or elsewhere in the country who can read those images.
Right.
And really, it's that knowledge of a remote workflow that I've applied in the same way in the world of occupational therapy. How did I get into business? Well, it's always been an ambition of mine to have my own company, and I originally founded the company back in 21, off the back of the COVID pandemic, focused on remote patient monitoring technologies and solutions. Now that marketplace became very saturated very quickly. Lots of people had the same ideas, and then why this particular solution? It really stems from me and my wife helping my mother-in-law gain access to adaptations in her own property. And it took so long to go through the formal channels that in the end, I ended up buying a stair lift off eBay and fitting it myself for her
Right.
so she could still have access to the upper floor of her house. Um, and then a close friend of mine, who is a mother of one of the children my kids go to school with, who is also an occupational therapist and is now our clinical lead, that's Lauren Kemp. I was talking about this process and got to understand the challenges Lauren was trying to overcome herself in occupational therapy here in Leeds. They were trying to solve the problem that we are now solving using video calling techniques. So trying to do a video call with a patient or a family member, and they walk
Yeah.
around with a tape measure. And because of my knowledge of imaging, and I've also done some work with LiDAR in the past in the automotive world, I knew there was a better solution out there. So myself and Lauren have really worked together to co-design and co-create this solution, which we now have. And the important point about this technology we have is the models we create, you can measure things in. So once the model's been created, it can be shared with everybody in the workflow remotely. So even if a home needs a major adaptation, like we required for my mother-in-law, when today that would be a face-to-face meeting with an occupational therapist and an
Yes.
equipment manufacturer. We even turn that into a video call. You know, they can share the model on
Amazing.
screen on a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting and have those conversations without them both needing to travel and be on that site.
Amazing.
So again, we're just increasing the general capacity of all of people in the sector.
Amazing. Absolutely fabulous. And so, I mean, look, think about the business itself, and having founded it, and grown it. What are some of the biggest issues and challenges you faced and overcome?
So I would say the biggest challenges are making sure that the solution you're developing, or or for anybody really, is a solution that people in the market want.
Yes.
And the way I overcame that in this occasion is I literally hawked around a PowerPoint presentation with a little feasibility video of, look, if I develop this, is it something that'd be meaningfully beneficial to your organization? And I
Great.
spoke to private sector, I spoke to the NHS, I spoke to councils, really to get that validation
Yep.
before we began. I think so many people, and I've met quite a few now on the various accelerators and things we've been on, they have an idea for a solution, but it isn't really addressing a real world problem.
Yep.
And those engagements you have, those conversations, that feedback you get from the real people that are having the actual problem, you learn so much. And a little example of that is we learned that we needed to translate the app to make it available to people for whom English is not the first language.
Yep.
And thankfully, we had some funding from the West Yorkshire Mayor's Challenge, in which we were a finalist in that process, which I'm very grateful for. We translated the app, but we were going to do it in textual format. But then having conversations with actual end users and people, I learned that for those people who might speak Urdu and Punjabi, they might not necessarily read it to a high standard.
Yep.
That meant that we had to introduce an audio-based translation as well. So now the device speaks to you when you're capturing the
Brilliant.
information in your language. So there's some of the technical challenges. I guess the other one, of course, is money. You know, being able to start a business and run a business as a founder, you have to be at a point in your life where you can do that, successfully. And I have four children to look after. I have a home to look after. I'm very fortunate. My wife, who's also in the industry, was able to keep us going during that period. But being able to be successful at winning grants
Yeah.
in the early stages is really important. And again, my advice to anybody on that is don't go into a grant on your own thinking that you can just, write all this material and send it. You need to form those partnerships with the industry you're working in. Of course, in my case, it's healthcare. So it's NHS organisations, it's councils, and also universities. There's loads of help out there to get these
Brilliant.
things refined. They take a lot of time, and as I said before, there's no prizes for second place on these things. If you're going to go at it, you've got to go in full bore to be able to
Yep.
win that funding. But that's one of the major challenges is just keeping money rolling in
Yes.
as you're building the company to the point at which you are revenue generating.
Yeah, it's yes, 100%. Cash is so critical, isn't it? Is
It is.
keeping that ball rolling wherever it comes from, because that's the one stopper for success, I think. And I think we're a business coaching organisation. Now, I'm just keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
So I have a few people in the industry that I've worked with over the years, and I would like to say we coach each other actually in terms of just keeping ourselves moving in the right direction. There's somebody I will shout out to, and that's Maria Burpee. She's a colleague of mine. I've worked in the medical imaging world and elsewhere. We've worked together in different roles, but she's been a fantastic support to me in terms of just allowing me to have a sounding board to talk things
Brilliant.
over with. She understands the world of business. And then from a finance perspective, I also have a good friend of mine, Christina Lambourne, who helps me on the financial side of things. Again, just talking things over. Are these numbers right? Do we feel we should be spending the money here on this particular thing? And we're preparing for funding because we're about to go out for a funding round. Really just sense checking my own thoughts and where
Great.
things are moving. And then, of course, not to mention my wife. She's in the industry. We spend
Yes.
a lot of time talking and definitely get lots of advice from her in terms of where I should take the company.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's a really interesting. There was a study done quite a long time ago now, but they were monitoring brain activity, and they found the brain fired off about 35% more when people talked about a topic than compared to when they thought about a topic. So just that ability, just that mechanism and that environment to be able to talk,
Yes,
um, significantly improves the thinking that goes with it. It would
I mean
appear.
I completely agree on that, and it was very much when I worked for IBM. It was very much encouraged in IBM that you had coaches in
Yeah,
IBM. They had external ones, but also just internally, you had
yeah,
a mentor within that structure. And I do think coaching is very important for anybody when they're entering into these things, particularly if they haven't run a business before. Having someone on the outside just to be that critical thinker and question what you're doing, and
yeah.
it's always really helpful.
Yeah, as I say, what I've experienced, but for myself as much as anything else, because I have my own coach, is just the ability to help walk around a problem, not just see the solution that we see in front of us. And I
Yes,
guess go back to your point about solving a problem that exists rather than just coming up with a great idea. It is that walking around and making sure this is a true problem and that it affects enough people to create a marketplace, which
yes.
clearly is what you've done, which is wonderful. And any favourite quotes or sayings that you catch yourself using on a regular basis?
Well, I think you've already heard me mention my most common quote. Really, is there are no second places. Sorry, there is no prize. I'm sorry for second place, and that is true in sales. It's true in grant applications. It's true in whatever you do in life. In the real world, there is no prize prize for second place, and that really means that if you are going to choose to dedicate yourself to something, you have to go at it full bore and
Yeah,
with all of the capability you can bring to the table yourself, and bring others in as well to help you solve that problem or attack that thing, because you can spend many weeks, you can spend months working on something, and healthcare sales can take 12, 18, 24 months to get a deal across the line. If you're going to commit yourself to that, then make sure that you are going after it in the right way. So yeah, I guess that would be my quote. I think also another quote that I think people who've worked with me would also say I ask all the time is, have you phoned them?
great,
Because people very much rely these days on electronic communication, the fire and forget methodology
brilliant,
of LinkedIn things and emails, and actually when people come back to you and say, oh no, I haven't made progress on this, it's like, well, did you phone them? Did you try and actually have a conversation? And that's something I really try to encourage with people I work with, is to have those conversations and not be afraid of the phone, which I do
brilliant.
think some people are these days.
Look, great advice, as you say, sound advice across business in general. It's like, yeah, it's easy. We all know it's easy to ignore emails or texts or whatever, but you can't. If you take a call, you can't actually ignore that conversation.
Exactly. And
It
you'll always learn something on a phone.
yes,
Always. It might not be the thing that you were trying to get to, but you'll learn some of the connection somewhere, another person's name or something. that really helps you progress things moving forward.
Brilliant. I was told years ago when we were talking about picking the phone up, especially telesales and telemarketing, was that the guy that was doing the training said, what happens when you pick the phone up? And we all going, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, money falls out. And I was always stuck with me. It's like, if you want to be successful, go back to the point about second base
Well,
is
there's something else I'll say about the phone as well. I don't know, for those of you that remember working in an office, I know a lot of us don't these days. We
yes,
work remotely, but if you ever remember being in an office and you were walking up to someone's desk, and let's say it's an open plan office, which at the time I was in offices, they were all open plan. You'd be talking to somebody. It could even be a business conversation you're having with somebody who's actually there in front of you. If their phone rings, 9 times out of 10,
mm,
they're picking it up, and the focus switches from the person in the front of them to the phone.
interesting.
And I think that's also a reason why being on the phone is you get someone's full attention when you're speaking with them.
It's a really good point. I've never really thought about that, but we all have to pick the phone up. It's very rare do people leave it. I suppose nowadays with mobiles, when you can see who the person is, it's probably that. But in general, absolutely, when the phone rings, we're looking at it at the very least, aren't we? And
Yes, we are.
fascinating. No, what a great point. And any favourite books, podcasts, whether that's about business or people or life in general. What?
Yeah, so I think my favorite book, and I guess my favorite person from history, is a book called The Most Secret War, and it's written by Dr. R.V. Jones, and he started the counterintelligence service. Um, I believe it was just before the breakout of the Second World War, and the book is fascinating in terms of how a very small group of scientifically and engineeringly minded individuals were able to work out what our enemy were developing against us at the time without actually seeing the thing that they were, trying to counter. But the reason why I mentioned Dr. R.V. Jones is not necessarily because of the subject itself, but I'm fascinated by how he built and managed his teams. He kept his teams very, very small so that everybody knew a little bit about everything. But he kept bits of work focused on individual people, but everyone knew who the specialist was in a particular
Right.
thing. And I think there's an awful lot to be learned from that when you're in a business. And in my case, I'm in a technical business. It's about understanding that we can't all chase the same football. We have to break this elephant down into its various different parts, and we have to go off and work on those things. But at the same time, we bring those things back together again, whatever they may be. And I'm not just talking coding; it can be all sorts. When you bring them back together, they have to operate as a whole,
Yes.
and that's very much how Dr. R.V. Jones works. And actually, towards the end of the book, he talks about when I guess he lost that control just from his seniors, asked him to change how he was working, and it became designed by committee, and it slowed them down enormously.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be learned from how Dr. R.V. Jones built his teams, recruited his teams, and managed his people to stay agile and to investigate all sorts of different things. There's so much of it that's applicable to running a startup.
Brilliant.
That I recommend anyone read it. It's called The Most Secret War.
The Most Secret War. Brilliant. I will get a copy of that. Thank you. That's wonderful. And sort of just continue the learning front for a little bit more. What would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far, Dominic?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. What have I learned about myself? I think I'm more resilient than I thought I was in the past in a sheltered real world job where you kind of got your salary regardless. I mean,
Yes.
what you were doing. Um, so I think I'm a lot more resilient than I thought I would be in terms of just being able to eat all the stuff that comes your way. And the capacity of work you have to generate when you're a very, very small team of people trying to achieve something. And I'm quite proud of what we've achieved now. The product is at the point where I am genuinely proud to show it to people. So that's one thing. I think also because I now at the moment I don't travel as much as I used to. My job was traveling all over the world in previous roles. And I was surprised at how little I missed that, even though at the time I loved it. I really enjoyed all the traveling I was doing. But actually being able to stay in one place, spend more time with my family, be in my own home rather than a hotel bed, That's something I think I've learned about is just how much I enjoy being
Brilliant.
rooted.
Brilliant. And I know you're on your journey with your business. So one of the definitions of a true business we have an action coach is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without its owners. And I don't know exactly where you're on your journey so far, but how do you feel about that as a definition, and where would you say you are on that process right
Yeah,
now?
I think it absolutely is the aim of the game, isn't it? Is to get there where you've got something which, yes, runs without you, because apart from anything else, it allows you to go and innovate somewhere else.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Yep.
so where am I on my journey? I'm definitely at the point where I am definitely needed. There's no doubt about that. You couldn't remove Dom from the business and it carry on going at this moment. But I completely appreciate that is where we need to get to, where I am able to have a team of people being able to do those things. Obviously, in my previous life as a senior leader in other people's businesses and some of those big businesses, I'm very familiar with what that feels like and what it looks like.
Yep.
But again, I'm really enjoying the process of just rolling my sleeves up and just getting into everything that
Yep.
we need to now. But I agree with the definition. It absolutely needs to be. I think you said a commercial enterprise that's making money that can run without the founders, and that certainly would be a place I'd love to get us to. Our next step is going to be getting funding, external funding, that is from investors,
Great.
um, to allow me to start building out the team of people that we need to be able to support the business going forward.
Brilliant. Wonderful. And so looking forward then, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
So, what does it look like for us? We are now at the point at which we are having our technology trialed by a number of organisations
Brilliant.
around the UK. So that's a really important phase for us, is to have successfully implemented trials. So we're going to support the hell out of them to make sure that they get a very positive experience whilst using the technology. And of course, the end goal then is to get into the procurement cycle to be able to be procured by these organisations. In the public sector, we know that's going to be a long timescale. We have to build business cases with them, something I'm familiar with from a sales perspective. We have to get them to get funding allocated, and then of course we can go into the procurement process to be procured. So that's really my focus right now, is getting these reference sites up and running and referenceable, and get them moving into their sort of procurement phase, which will come after the trials have been successful, so that the next pipeline building we'll be doing, which we're going to start in November, because we're going to be going to the occupational therapy trade show at the NEC. The whole focus of that trade show is to build the pipeline of the actual sales opportunities. So last year we
Brilliant.
attended and I was looking for people. Hey, we've got this solution. We're looking for people to trial it, and give us some
Yep.
feedback. And then this year it's all about building that pipeline and getting us to being a truly revenue generating company. Challenges that we're going to see, and again, I'm going to be very open and honest. We're selling to the public sector. It's a very slow process, or can
Yep.
be, even though we are solving a problem and we are a cash releasing
Yep.
solution for them. It is still a difficult process, because whilst we don't have competitors necessarily from a direct technical perspective, that isn't really what competitors are all about. It's all about what else are they spending their money on.
Yep.
If council service, they might have a focus on infrastructure or on
Yep.
bus route or something they're doing, and they compete with you just as much for attention, time, and resource and money as a direct competitor would, solving the same problem you are. So that's going to be a challenge in the public sector, is just making sure that we are at the top of the list for them in terms of focus. Um, and I guess the other challenge I'm going to have is raising funding through investors. We know that the landscape is very difficult right now from an investment perspective. The feedback I'm getting from investors that I am speaking with at the moment is they all want to see traction, really before they're willing to put their money in. So that's going to be a challenge, is just getting that traction and
Yep.
evidence of that traction, building that pipeline to give investors confidence then to want to be able to put their money towards us and help us overcome this challenge that we're trying
Yeah.
to solve.
Yeah. I mean, I think it does help having that traction, because it does put you in a different negotiated position in many ways. So, while I'm sure, getting funding earlier is as early as possible just gives us that feeling of of comfort. I think the deals I see done in favour of the founder are a lot better when there is some traction, some sales under. I mean, it's
Yes.
if anybody watching Dragon's Den for any length of time will see one of the first things they always ask is what sales have you done so
What
far,
sales you do?
uh,
Exactly.
and, and
Yeah.
and so yeah, but
Uh,
that's
yeah. I
but
mean, to date, our focus has been removing all the barriers that exist to getting to that point of sale. And the majority of those in healthcare sit around governance. It's
yeah,
around being a class one medical device. It's about getting your DTAC documentation done, if you're familiar with that, the NHS's technical assurance criteria you have to go through. It's about getting your cyber essentials done. We're working
yeah,
on 27001. So we're removing all the hurdles
yeah.
piece by piece to get through that procurement journey, and also enable us to get on procurement frameworks, which is something else that we're going to need to
Yes.
get done too. So,
Makes perfect sense. And just thinking about your business for going back all the way to the start. If you had to start again, is there anything significant you do different? Do you think?
can I be completely honest with you?
Absolutely, please. Yeah, as much as you choose.
If I was starting a business for the sake of creating a business only, I at the moment the way the political landscape is in the UK, I wouldn't be in healthcare.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
even though
Yep.
my background is in healthcare, if I were to do it again, I wouldn't choose healthcare. I think we're not making it very easy for startups.
Yep.
Even though I've had loads of support, the Propel program have been amazing. Nexus have been fantastic. The West Yorkshire Mayor's Challenge was really good for us. I'm not saying that there isn't help out there.
Yes.
The funding landscape's very difficult, and the NHS absorbing new innovations is quite a difficult and long process.
Yeah.
Um, and staying alive long enough to get to profitability in the healthcare space is quite difficult. But that isn't the reason why I'm starting a business
No.
in this entirety. If you cut me through the middle, I do say healthcare like a stick of rock. It is my nature and
Yes.
it is my background. But I would say if I were to start again with a rational brain on, I probably wouldn't have started in healthcare. I
No.
have done some work outside of healthcare, and sales moves so much quicker out there in industry. Um, but you're not necessarily solving the real problems, in
Yeah.
society, which is really what keeps me in
I
healthcare.
I think I mean I think what I've seen is purpose runs through the core of most successful businesses.
Yes,
So I totally get the point of, if I was to start a business again today, it might be somewhere else just because it's easier. But I think that the importance of purpose is just becoming more and more essential, I think, in businesses. So I totally get it.
yes.
Um,
Uh,
but
and again, just to go back to the point I made a bit earlier, and for those people thinking about starting a business, if they're watching this podcast, is test your idea early. The
yes,
first time around with the remote patient monitoring stuff we were working on, we didn't really test the idea. We just
yeah,
got building because we could. We had a developer, we just got building. And it's the one lesson I've learned so far, and that is it does you so much benefit to hawk the idea around to a bunch of stakeholders, to get your feedback from them, to shape the product, to really understand the problem you're trying
yeah,
to solve, to make sure that whatever you do create is something that your
yes,
customer base is then going to want. And that's one thing I would advise anybody do is, test it theoretically without spending any money,
yeah,
without committing anything apart from your time. And you'll be amazed at how welcoming people will be
yeah,
to you for having those conversations. There is an innovation front door in the NHS, in most organisations, and it's true also in the councils from my perspective. If you look at the private sector, they always have somebody responsible for research and innovation. Go talk to those people, to have those conversations, and that would be my one lesson to anybody else who's just on the start line is, before committing any of your hard earned money and quitting your job, go and test it first.
brilliant. What comes to mind to me, and I've seen quite a few times, is understand that those people around us, our family, our friends, our close connections, are we need them as supporters. But supporters are going to tell us it's a brilliant idea.
Yes.
They don't want to tell us maybe there's, and
Yeah.
therefore it's really important we find critical whether that's the marketplace itself, whether it is government councils, people that will tell us why it might not be, so that
Yes,
we are robust in our proposition. It's just because our family and our friends tell us it all sounds amazing.
exactly. And like I learned in the remote patient monitoring domain, you also need to operate in a space where there's a gap for you to go into.
Yeah,
So if you're coming in as a startup and there's already 10 companies 10 steps ahead of you, then go and start a different race. Go and do the egg and spoon race instead, because there might be less people over there. I think that's also a really important lesson to have learned as a founder
yeah.
and as an innovator. And again, I am an innovator. I've always got ideas. I constantly talking to my wife about, oh, we could do this, we can do that. But focus is the other thing. You see,
Yeah,
once you're on a path, this is the path. And I'm not saying I won't deviate if I need to a little to get around things, but I'm such a believer that focus is needed to get you where
yeah.
you're going. And although I've got all these other ideas bursting out that I want to go off and and take on, I know that if I waste my own resources over here, then I won't make the progress I need to in this channel, and that's
Brilliant.
really important, I think, too.
I saw an acronym for focus many years ago that's always stuck with me, which was fixed on course until successful.
Yes,
And I like that. I mean,
yes,
I would agree with you. There needs to be that level of monitoring to make sure it is still a good idea. But
yes,
I think too many, too often people give up too early rather
yes,
than see it through. And I think you talked
yes,
about resilience earlier. It's being able to be fairly pig-headed, I think, sometimes, of this is, we've done all the checks to start. This is a good idea. It's fulfilling a need. It's solving a problem. Now we've just got to get through all the red, and I can't imagine how much red tape there probably is in what you're doing. Um,
yeah.
and so it's just keeping going, isn't it?
It is, absolutely is. And I guess just going back to that, test your idea, test it with many people, because just because someone thinks it's not a good idea, and I have had those
Yes.
naysayers, um, you know, test it with 20 different people and just see, well, what does the general consensus say,
Yeah.
rather than it's one person very vociferously telling you it's the wrong way, so you mustn't go down this route. Because if you take that time, then again, you learn things. Every
Yeah.
conversation should be aimed at learning something.
Brilliant. And final question: what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that, Dominic?
18-year-old me, I would encourage me to start earlier on my journey. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think it is difficult for it's not just young people; it's people that haven't got the financial means to be able to take the risk that you take when you start a business. But there are ways of doing those things whilst maintaining a job. So I
Yes.
definitely wouldn't put people off. But I just said, if you have a dream and you have something you want to do, which I've always wanted to have my own business. I just wish I'd started 20 years ago rather than starting when I did start. But that said, in my career, I've learned an enormous amount
Yeah.
from so many different people I've met in work, out of work, in other sectors of my life. I've learned so much. So it's definitely being an older, wiser head is an advantage. But there's so much help out there. Go and
Yeah.
find it. If yes, I'm talking to 18-year-old me, but talking to a current 18-year-old now, there's so much help out there if you can
Yeah.
go find it. Go and network with people. I'm based in Leeds, and obviously this is a Northern Powerhouse thing. I know Manchester has got a fantastic networking culture, networking scene. So has Leeds, which I participate in. Just go and join these things. You can
Brilliant.
have a look on the various platforms online to find these events that are running for free around your area. Just go to them, go learn, go chat to people, go
Yep.
understand what the challenges are that people have, and you'll be surprised who you meet.
Yeah.
You might be an 18-year-old person going in there, not quite knowing quite what you want to do, but you might meet the CEO of a healthcare organization who guides you and points you and coaches you in the right direction with these things. So, yeah, definitely encourage people to go out there and network.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Sound advice for anyone, I think. Dominic, it's been fascinating to talk to you, and I really appreciate your openness and the sharing some of the things you've learned. And for anyone that's watching that would like to get in touch with you or Humant, what would be the best way of doing that?
Okay, so yeah, we have our website is humant.io, and that's human with a T on the end. So www.humant.io. You can contact me directly on my email, which is dkirkman@humant.io, or connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me on there. I'm always happy to speak with people. I myself also do a little bit of coaching with people, just informally, not a formal process, but always feel free to reach out. Anyone who's starting a healthcare business, if you want pointing in the right direction, well, pointing in the directions that I know of at least,
Yep,
then
brilliant.
please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help.
Thank you. Well, it'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months and just see what the next stages of your journey
That
are
would be
so
great.
far. But for
Yeah,
today, for now, thank you so much.
that's great. Thank you for having me, Chris. I appreciate that.
Thank you.